right on the money. We are expecting our colleague Rob Mann here shortly, but we will get on with the meeting and he'll be here any minute. Andy, first, any of you, agenda adjustments. I see we have a note for an agenda adjustment. A request was made to include under deliberations board action on the administration's recommendation for use of the Hollis School buildings and the SAU building expendable trusts, which are the subject of public hearing. There being no objection, the agenda will be amended as requested, and we will have the public hearing, and then after the hearing and discussion on other topics, when we get to the deliberation section, we will take action on the recommendations that are discussed in the hearing. Any questions, concerns, comments?
I'm fine with that one, but I have one other.
Great.
I'm going to ask the board to add under deliberations. I forgot this is already June. It's kind of snuck up on me, but this is usually the month where the board will vote to give you the authority to hire,
Right.
terminate, and accept resignations, because we don't necessarily have a concrete meeting scheduled over the summer.
Right.
And we'll talk about that a little bit, because our next meeting would be scheduled for July 7th, which I'm not sure that's the wisest choice for us, but we can discuss that later during discussion.
All right, so we've added that to, do you want to add it to discussion or just deliberation?
Deliberations for the superintendent's piece.
That's fine, great. Okay. Any other adjustments, agenda adjustments? Great, so we'll move on. Correspondence, resignations, nominations.
I have a couple. I'm going to start with two resignations or retirements. After long determination and soul searching, I have decided to retire from my position as speech language assistant at the completion of the 2021 school year. I feel very fortunate to have had the opportunity to continue my career in education at Hollis Primary School. I will miss Hollis, my colleagues who have become dear friends, and especially the children of HPS. I am looking forward to spending more time outdoors and exploring new adventures to remain connected with children. I hope to travel with my husband and be able to spend more time with my 5 grandchildren. And that comes from Sophie Merrill.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, Sophie.
Yeah. It is with regrets and sadness that I read that, but at the same time, I'm excited for her. You know, she's done a wonderful job. It's a loss for us, but I think, you know, we wish her the best in the next phase of her career.
So unfortunately, I need a motion to accept the letter of written intent to retire from Sophie Merrill.
So moved with regrets.
Second.
Great. Discussion? Hi, Rob. Let's let Mr. Mann settle. Rob, we're taking a motion to accept the intent to retire letter from speech pathologist Sophie Merrill of HPS, which is a great loss to us. We've had a motion by Carol, second by Amy. If there's no discussion, all in favor? Thank you.
Okay. The second one. Hello, Andy. It has been my pleasure getting to work for this amazing school district, but sadly, I am emailing to inform you that I will be leaving after the school year. My husband and I will be relocated to Kentucky following the end of this school year. I feel honored to have worked with such a talented and caring team of special educators, administrators, specialists, and teachers. I will miss working here. And that comes from Monica Embry. And again, we wish Monica all the best as she and her husband move to Kentucky to again look at the next stage of their career. So some difficult decisions recently, but you know, as much as I wish they weren't happening, they're for all the right reasons, and I'm supporting them as they move forward.
Is this an intent to retire or is this a resignation?
This is a resignation.
All right, great. I'd like a motion, please, to accept the letter of resignation from Monica Embry.
So moved with regret.
Second.
Carol and what's your name? Oh, Rob. That's right. So, if there isn't any discussion, all in favor?
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
We wish her luck. Quite the move. It's going to be different in Kentucky.
Yeah, yeah. The next piece is for informational purposes. I received a letter from the town, and I just wanted to make the board aware. The letter is just about the planning board has approved a 2-house subdivision, and it will go from along Proctor Hill Road and Love Lane. And the reason the town is notifying us is
water.
because the driveway into the new property, the shared driveway, will cross over the water lines that we watch over. So they wanted us to be aware of it. They will have the town people, Lance will attend from the district, and the developers will be there on the day they do the work around the water lines. It's, other than the water lines, it's really not anything that we're concerned about. I mean, it's going to be, I think, a nice, cute little development, and we'll move forward from there. So that was just informational, so you...
So those water lines feed the middle school, right?
At middle school and what I'll call the Monument Square area, depending, some homes,
Yes.
yes, some homes, no.
And those lines are documented, so workers and survey people can locate them, so that we don't have any issues?
Yep, the town planning piece sent me the maps with everything on it. They're going to have a pre-construction meeting, which we'll be invited to attend, which we will. And then they'll actually have the construction day when they're working on that paving over those water lines.
Is school in session during that planned work around the
It
water
is-
lines?
Right now, I would say no, Rob, but at the same time, just knowing how building and contractors, I don't know when they'll exactly get to the work this summer.
Okay, so it's during the summer? Okay.
Yes, that's the intent.
All right.
That was
Yep.
my question too.
Yep.
Yeah, like, are they doing it tomorrow?
Does the co-op know?
The co-op will get that at their meeting, just so they're
Because if
aware.
something goes wrong with those water lines, it's actually not the Hollis School Board's, the Hollis School District's bad outcome, it would be the middle schools, right?
Right.
Those lines don't feed these buildings.
Yeah, you can't run a school without water.
Right.
That'll
Also-
shut the schools right down.
Also, for informational purposes, I think the board is aware, we received a lawsuit regarding masks that was filed against all four entities that make up SAU 41, so Hollis Brookline Co-op, and the SAU. I just want to let the board know that our attorney has been working on that. He intends to have his motion to dismiss prepared and to send. What I will do is, once he's filed that motion, I will send it to the chair, and at that point, she can distribute it to the board members.
Do we know what date that filing will take place?
It should take place tomorrow, Rob,
Tomorrow,
and
okay.
there's
Well, the hearing's Friday.
a virtual hearing, a preliminary hearing on Friday, so we'll know more there. Our attorney will be representing us, so nobody needs to attend from any of the boards or the SAU office. He'll be filing on our behalf. Also informational, this afternoon, and I'll let Bob share it because he was on the call. If you want to just give the update.
Yeah, so we participated in the weekly call with the Department of Health and Human Services with Dr. Chan, the state epidemiologist, and they announced today that they are lifting the guidance around outdoor masking, which means that we will be able to end our outdoor masking procedures. And he did indicate that there are further changes that are in discussions that could be coming in the next couple of weeks. So it's our intention to notify families tomorrow that we'll move to a model where masks are not required by students at recess, that it will become a parent choice, and that the building principals will work with parents who want their children to wear masks during outdoor activities. That includes recess, outdoor classroom time, and even end-of-the-year events, including field day, commencement ceremonies, and graduations.
Bob, does this action comply with the, I believe we refer to it as the MOA agreement that we instituted last September?
So this is a change in some of the language. However, we indicated in both the MOA and then throughout the year that we follow the recommendations of Health and Human Services, and that the plan that we have in place, the entry plan that we created back in August is a fluid document.
And if you remember correctly, Rob, we started the year without masks at recess, and then our first case, DHS required us to quarantine the entire classroom because they had been at recess without masks. So once we learned that that was going to be the case, and families really couldn't, always have their child coming home because of a case outside, we moved to that. So I've been in contact with unions, they're aware that this was probably coming down the pike.
Okay.
So I don't think we'll get
So
much pushback.
at this point, you don't see any implications with this action?
No, and I think with the, I was getting a little nervous, quite honestly, with the temperatures going to be in the high 90s potentially next week, because our littlest students don't really know how to, go slow. They're one speed, which is all out until they, are exhausted. And you see that every day at recess. From the moment they get to that playground until the bell sounds, it's 30 minutes of total all-out movement. So I'm really happy about this because we've been working on hydration and all those pieces, but I just think it gives us one more piece. And I think it'll be a real powerful experience for kids for social emotional purposes to end the year at field days without them on. Unless, again, if a parent wants them to have masks on, there's no reason they can't wear a mask, and we'll do everything to work with that family to provide them the comfort level.
So this is more disclosure to the board. You don't need a board action for this decision around outdoor mask wearing?
No, because when you approved the plan, you also approved giving us the flexibility. So we didn't get a motion when we put masks on at recess because the way the plan was designed.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And then last informational piece, we are ready to go this summer with H Smart. We're very excited. We appreciate the board's allowing us to encumber the funds for Air Handler 3. And we wanted to make you aware that beginning June 14th, we'll be doing some tree cutting for the access road to the new cistern. So we'll be behind our property because the cistern's actually going to sit between HPS and Hughes in the dirt area there. And many of those trees have caused me concern over the years because there's some really big pines in that I always worry if we had a windstorm come through, and we've experienced a few times where we've lost playground equipment. So they'll be starting June 14th. I'll be talking with them tomorrow to go over exactly the procedures for those days of how we'll get the equipment in, and once the equipment is in, it's in for the day.
Is there any implications around the electrical easement that's between the two schools?
No, because we're looking at, and I'm going to use 50 yards, my description, not theirs, but off Drury Lane, we're coming in, 30, 40 yards to the cistern, which will be in the ground, and have a, what I'll call a shed over it. So if you know the HPS playground, and you looked at it right now, we have a shed on there.
Yes.
That's our watershed. So we're going to have another one a little further back that will be the fire cistern, which will be 15,000 gallons of water.
I see.
We have plenty of property between the power line easement
Yeah, I've
and the
been back
building and the playground. We had looked at putting the entire solar installation
Yes.
in those woods. There's plenty of room for
There's
this.
lots of
Right.
property back there.
Yeah.
But
I
I
do
was
have a
just
question.
concerned if we need to connect to, between the two schools, we got to go across that easement. I don't know if there would be.
This is strictly
issues.
for.
No, we
primary.
won't, this is just an HPS and the sprinkler, and just so you know, that plan was fully vetted by the state fire marshal.
Right.
And then I had a follow-up conversation with the local chief, and everything is good to go. So we're excited. It's going to get very busy very
Oh,
quickly
yeah.
the week of the 18th.
Sounds good.
This is all, the cistern is strictly for the sprinkler system at the primary
Yes.
school. Because we've got the same, actually, there's the same kind of tank is in a reservoir at Hughes, near the gym in a section you don't even think about. But this has to go in the ground in this case. Andy, you kind of jumped the gun a tiny bit. That was under discussion, and we need approval of minutes.
No, I didn't, well, that was not.
You
that
got
was
more to
information-
say later. Okay,
No,
good.
the trees was something I had to mention, because we're going to take down a couple trees that are going to be 200 feet tall. I just wanted the board to be aware, as you drive in and you see these trees, it's going to be quite something.
Yeah, it's.
So I turn it back to you for minutes, Madam Chair.
All right, excellent, excellent. So next on our agenda is approval of minutes.
Yes, I move to approve the Hollis School Board minutes from May 5th, 2021 as presented.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you.
I also move to approve the Hollis School Board workshop from May 11th, 2021, with the following amendments. Page 2, line 30, replace has with as. Page 11, line 5, replace there with they. Page 11, line 16, delete when before we do.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Great, that seems to be all of our minutes. And now we have on our agenda committee appointments. As you remember from our SAU Governing Board, if you were there, we have 3 new subcommittees on the Governing Board, and this is going to be an extremely busy year for the Hollis School Board. We have, you know, even in terms of member workload for the board, Amy's got RSEC. It's the school. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Is over near Walmart. It's a fantastic school for certain kids who have certain needs, and they have board positions that rotate among the local districts that send kids there on the occasion that we have an out-of-district placement that goes there. And it's Hollis's turn this year, and Amy will be serving the 3-year term by appointment. Another one of our subcommittees is going to be the Rent and Lease Committee, which Rob has graciously offered to continue building on the work he's done over the many, many years here, and he wears 2 hats. One would be on the schools, on the Hollis district side as an owner of the property, and on the SAU Governing Board side as a leader on the question of what the SAU needs and what it should take and what alternatives there might be. So appreciate your serving on that, Rob. Yep. Absolutely. The other 2 subcommittees that need to be filled are the Health Insurance Study Group and the SAU Staff Compensation Study Subgroup. As Tom Solon said at the Governing Board meeting, there was a very, very big, intensive medical insurance study done by a similar subgroup, probably, 8-10 years ago, during a time when every contract across the SAU had different insurance companies, different insurance arrangements. It was all over, and we were not getting the economies of scale. We were not even able to really compete as an SAU for better pricing and better services from the companies. So over the many years, Kelly and Andy and the boards worked to, identify with the work of the subcommittee, excellent policies that were economical and allowed us bit by bit to negotiate with our various memberships to get everyone on board together to get us better service and better pricing. But as was mentioned at the SAU Governing Board, we haven't looked at that in many years, and it could be that there's great stuff out there, better pricing, better services that we are not familiar with, and it's time to study that question again. I don't know if any of you have professional or extensive experience researching health insurance and would like to serve on this subcommittee, have that kind of interest. No, if you don't have it, would prefer not to. It's a very difficult topic. I don't mind taking it on myself. Happy to do it. Just wanted to put it out there and see if anyone is anxious to volunteer for it. All right, so I'm going to appoint myself unless you have a better idea, which I'm happy to hear. The other subcommittee is the SAU Staff Compensation Subcommittee. It's high time that we do some comps, figure out what we need. It'll overlap a little bit with what Rob will be doing in the sense of square footage. What if we determine we need 3 more people? Even 1 more person is 1 too many. The building is bursting. So there might, I don't know if we need another person, but we need to find out if we're paying properly, if we have the right contracts, if we have the right long-term projections, given the things that are coming down the road, and we need to study what other districts in the state are doing. And we need to look also at competitive energies across the border, because we have seen in the past here and there individuals across the SAU who get cherry-picked away by the grotesquely large pay scales in Massachusetts, and we're protected a little bit by the cost of living issues and the taxation in Massachusetts, but it all needs studying to figure out what the sweet spot is for our SAU staff going forward, and I don't know who amongst us would like to take that on, if any. Brooke, do you want to do this?
Yeah, I mean, if someone else would like to, that's fine, but I'm happy to take
Does anyone else would like to participate in this? I personally feel like it's not necessary to only have one of us, although I think that's what's expected. Rob, you want
Yeah, I
to?
have an interest, yes.
You have an interest also?
It's been a long-standing
I know it is. Concern.
bug in my bonnet for a really long time. So I'm happy to be in more of an advisement role or whatever capacity. I'm happy to have Brooke be the main representative, whatever works. I'll just put it out there.
What, Andy, do you have any insight? Is it a problem to appoint two people to go as they can?
I think they both have the interest. I think this one is time sensitive because we'd like to have something for the SAU board in the fall. And this way, I think we can better share the work of contacting districts and trying to get information like that. So I would welcome the two people, and Brookline appointed their person. I'll have the co-ops the middle of the month, and then we'll get started.
I think it'd be great. Sometimes you can't make it, sometimes you can't make it, but also, it's not like it's a voting committee. It's just work, and the more,
Just yeah.
many hands make light work, so.
Doing the deep dive.
Great,
on
that'd
the
be
data.
great.
Yep.
Great. All right, so we'll appoint Brooke and Rob. That'd be great.
Yep, if that gets complicated, I'm happy to step back and
Oh,
let
same
let
thing,
Brooke-
Rob. And if it's something that you're very interested in, I just wanted to make,
Okay.
I wanted to
We'll
I think
put
figure
it
it
out there to get it done, because
We'll
I think
figure
it's
it out.
important, so.
The complexity might be the meeting space, so we'll see what
Yeah.
happens.
We'll make it work.
I'd like having the embarrassment of riches, right? It's good to have extra. That's super, thank you. And I'll do the medical insurance because I just love that stuff. If there's no further discussion on this particular topic, then we are ready for our public hearing, regardless of the fact that we don't have members of the public here now. We are on film and we on live stream, and it's important that we fulfill this as though the room were packed. So if I could have a motion to put the board in recess until the conclusion of the public hearings on the maintenance trust funds, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Great. And the time is, what time is it?
6:22.
Thank you. All right, and we're opening our public hearing. We are having our public hearing in accordance with RSA 198:20-C. Our business administrator, Kelly Seeley, has provided an explanation of proposed expenditures from the Hollis School District Expendable Trust Funds. Andy, before you go into these, I assume you're presenting them?
Yep.
Could you remind everyone on the board and at home how the trust expenditures work in the sense that we have to have a public hearing,
Correct.
et cetera?
The expendable trusts that we'll talk about tonight, which I'll cover one at a time, were established by vote of the community, and it allows the board to carry money from one year to the next for maintenance, SAU maintenance, special ed trust, and the water system trust. What is required is that we go through the budget process, we work with the school board and the budget committee to identify items that we feel belong in the maintenance trust or the SAU trust. Once we complete the budget process, those items are then put into the article that goes to the voters, the maintenance trust article, and it's the same items that they're approving are the same ones that we have discussed during the budget season. So the articles tonight that you'll hear about are all items that we knew about, we had talked about, we had planned on. The only other way this trust would be used if something came up that was a surprise and we had to take money out of the maintenance trust. But anytime we take money out of the maintenance trust, we're required to have a public hearing. So we post the notices at the different buildings, letting folks know that not only are we having a school board meeting, but we're having a public hearing, and we make it part of our agenda. And then I'm going to walk you through these 4 trusts, and then later on during deliberations, through the agenda adjustment, we're going to take a motion and vote on those. As I go through, I'll stop after each trust to see if there are any questions from the board. If there are none, then I'll move to the next trust. The first one is the Hollis School Buildings Expendable Trust. A little background, principals Paula Spicki and Candy Fowler identified several needed repairs, improvements for their respective buildings during the budget process. At the FY22 budget hearing, the Hollis Budget Committee recommended, along with the Hollis School Board, that the funding source for these particular items be the Hollis School Building Expendable Trust. So for FY '22 at Hughes, we are proposing the playground field fencing, so around the track up back, as well as the playground structure fencing, which is the fencing around the different equipment that we have for the students to play on. So that brings Hughes subtotal to $23,000. At HPS, we'll finish phase 1 and do phase 2 of classroom flooring. We had, a number of years back, Kelly put forth a regular maintenance schedule so we could go through all our flooring. To do the grades 2 and 3, all the classrooms, and to finish phase 1 is $50,500. We'll do the roof drain cleaning that we do periodically every so many years. And it's a matter of really getting somebody in to go down to our roof drains and make sure we're not having backup and things of that nature for $2,000. We do our sanitary sewer evaluation, where we bring in a company to just, where's our septic system at? How's it been going? That's something we've been doing regularly. And then we're replacing the gym wall mats and closet doors. So when you come into the primary school where they have physical ed classes during the colder months, we'll be able to have mats on the wall to provide the extra safety should a child fall and bump themselves on the mats. That will be $37,000. So the HPS subtotal would be $91,500 for a total of $114,500. Kelly also provided us the current balance, which is $132,509. We'd be adding the approved amount of $120,000, which is what the voters approved in the warrant article. We're proposing the expenditures of $114,500. So we're anticipating an ending balance of FY '22 of $138,009. That money is there again, could be utilized in an emergency if something came up, but we would have to go through this process, and part of our process also involves reaching out to the Budget Committee and informing them of what's going on and why. Are there any questions on the Hollis School Building Expendable Trust?
The gym wall mats, so that's a new install, that is not a replacement of a premise?
That's correct.
But the closet doors are a replacement?
I believe that is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Or I'm assuming that there'll be padded doors then as well?
Correct. What
Okay.
we're doing, we're going to go to a certain height around the whole gym, so that pretty much the height of a primary school student, just because, again, they just go a mile a minute, and at some point, somebody's going to run into the wall, and we just want to prevent that injury.
How does that impact lunchtime?
It really won't impact lunch because it's about a 3-inch foam matting that's just on the wall. It looks very pleasing to the eye.
So the custodians would clean the mats the way they clean the walls? after
Right.
lunch?
Actually, the mats will be a little easier to clean than the
Yeah,
walls.
the-
A
Yep.
lot of high schools have them behind the basketball hoops for
Right,
when
right.
people go and then their
Right.
momentum
I've seen them,
carries
it's just
to the
that
wall.
the
so it's
little
the
ones
same
are
thing.
constantly touching every,
Yeah.
we've all cleaned the tables there. It's
Thanks, Andy, for that detail.
Oh, you're welcome. Any other questions on that before I move on to the SAU building? Okay, a little background here. Since many of the needed improvements to the building at 4 Lund Lane are dependent on the bond renovation, nothing was presented for FY '22. Now that the warrant wasn't pursued, meaning the bond for the building, the proposal for this trust is to remove the bathtub in the SAU building and replace it with the hallway so that one office is not the egress for 5 other employees. So we're requesting permission to remove the bathtub and create a hallway, which is an estimated cost of $15,000. The current balance in the SAU trust is $56,972. We'd be adding our $23,970. We would remove the bathtub and build in a hallway, which would be a $15,000 expense. So the ending balance would be $65,942. If you're not familiar with the SAU, if you go up the staircase and you take a right, that doorway gets you into Kelly's office, Lance's office, and the other 4 people that work in the business office. What we're proposing is by taking out the bathtub, we'll be able to block up, well, not block it up, but utilize the entrance, so it'll be Kelly and Lance's entrance, and then the women who work in the accounts payable, payroll, and the assistant business managers will have their own separate entrance. It's also a safety piece because now we'll have multiple ways to egress the building in case of an emergency. And again, we hadn't originally talked about this because it was part of the bond proposal, but we, again, don't know what next year's bond will bring. And we do believe this will be an improvement, and getting the bathtub out would be appropriate.
And it makes me laugh every time.
Yeah,
I'm
My
sorry.
first
That's
thought-
why
Well,
we're
it does-
giggling about the bathtub.
So my first
It
thought
does
when I read
eliminate the
this-
opportunity for a midday bubble bath, but
It does.
You
It
can't
does.
take a
But
bubble
Bob's
bath.
going to Hampstead, and they're putting one in over there for him.
we'll send you the bathtub.
It's your memento. We'll engrave it.
Right, I know, I was like, who gets to keep the bathtub?
My first thought when I read this is, oh, they won't be going through Lance's office, now they'll be going through the bathroom to get out. So everybody's going to have to line up and wait till the bathroom's empty to get out of their offices. No, no, no.
I'm interested in, I kind of see an opportunity here about possibly looking at the rest of the bathroom and doing a major renovation for that. I see we have $65,942 as a balance. Speaking as a single member, I have great interest in knowing what a renovated bathroom would look like in that space and any costs associated with it, to maybe build that into the plan.
Okay.
I think we can do a lot of upgrades in that area with the balance that we have. So
Okay.
I'll just open it up.
Can I kind of add on that a question to
please.
you? Knowing the barn renovation proposal that was in existence, would such a renovation, that was part of that proposal originally, right? So what you're saying is,
Do it now.
if we were to do it now.
Do it now.
It doesn't get ripped out if we ever move forward with the barn renovation.
Yeah, well, the barn, to my mind, barn renovation could happen.
Right.
It may not happen, we don't
Right.
know. This is something that we can
It
do,
has to happen.
and we can put a stake in the ground and said, that bathroom's been a real issue, the
Yeah.
way it is.
Okay.
And a lot of people have referred to that bathroom, that, you know, what, 13, 14 people in an office get to use a
17
bathroom that
people,
looks
2
like
bathrooms.
yours at home. I
That-
think
yeah.
that. I
Not
think that-
mine.
That's the one bathroom in the building?
They have 2 bathrooms for 17 people, but these
2.
bathrooms are from like the
The
1950s.
one upstairs, okay.
Yeah.
They're porcelain sinks and, you know.
No,
mean,
I've been
would-
there, I've seen it, I
Yeah.
haven't been there in a while.
I would be interested in knowing if we could address both bathrooms with the balance that we currently have, in addition to the proposal that you brought here tonight, and maybe hear about what that plan would look like in our next, under new business for our next meeting.
What I would do, or what I would ask, is that if we move forward with the amount that was requested when we get to deliberation, that's fine. We could bring back further information in July, and then if the board so chooses, we could post a new public hearing in August, and it may or may not be done, but just knowing that the money's there, we could use, you know, like a vacation week or a long weekend probably to tackle a large portion of it. So I'm happy getting that total price for you.
So I have
Is that-
questions.
well,
Sure.
Is that the will of the board?
Uh,
Yeah, I'm interested.
My question to you, Andy, is if this, we're assuming this will pass, so when is the work going to be done?
We would be scheduling a contractor for sometime this summer,
This summer? So my concern is we may not have a meeting in July.
right?
So if we wanted to do extensive work, like replace or renovate the rest of the bathroom, you're not going to just do the bathtub and the wall and doors of that, and then go back and get more money and then do another renovation, and it's all unrelated.
Right, right, but the dilemma would be, the maintenance trust would require a public hearing.
Right, right.
We-
No, I
you know,
agree.
so
I agree.
We couldn't just add money tonight because we'd never really noticed the
That's
public
right,
that we were
that's right.
doing that. So I wouldn't want to do that. But I think if we came back, let's say it was even August, Tammy, we would have enough time to use the 2 weeks or 10 days at Christmas time to potentially do that renovation, you know.
Right, I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned back to double the work and double the cost. If we're going to spend the 15 and
We
find
gotta-
out 5 of it
We got
was
a team
misspent
out there
because,
already, yeah.
Well, but here's
So
here's
couldn't
the-
we just have a public hearing without having a board meeting?
No,
Well,
we
it
gotta
would be,
call
it would
order.
be part of a board meeting, and the answer is yes, you could absolutely do that. The other thing, Carol, is listening to the board, we can get a price, talk to the architect. If he feels, to Tammy's point, that doing one thing would be, cause new costs or duplicating costs, then what I would propose is I did nothing that forces me to move forward with this. I would wait to August, come back and still have the 15,000, and then do the public hearing and request
Right.
the whole piece.
The-
Now, if there's
Because there's
no,
demolition, there's
Well,
doors,
I
there's all of it,
totally get it.
plumbing.
The other option, and I'll let the chair and the superintendent kind of mull this other option, we could have a very shortened meeting in July, just focused on a public hearing where we hear about plans and we take one motion to
I'm-
get this
Well,
in
to Carol's
place.
point, you can have a
There's
public
nothing
hearing, right?
sacrosanct about, historically, we've tried to not meet in July to keep our meetings down. I think, there are times where we do need to move plans and projects forward. If we keep a very focused agenda for July, that's maybe a half hour long,
Oh, not even, yeah.
it's doable, but I'll let you figure out the logistics.
tell you,
on
I
that.
think-
Do you want to wait a month? If you can get an answer on
wouldn't.
these numbers in 2 weeks,
Hell no.
couldn't we knock that out?
We could knock it out before.
well,
Well,
you're,
that's what I'm saying, is
Yeah.
why wait till then? If you guys
We could-
want to get it
we
done in
could
the
do it
summer, we
earlier.
can do the public hearing to grant you the greater
Right.
amount of money if it's appropriate, then
we could absolutely get something on the books for later this month. It wouldn't be on a Wednesday, but that's okay, we've done that before. So as we get to deliberations, if you want to just, at that point say, we'd rather have you go back to Kelly, get a concrete number, repost a public hearing and come back and ask for what you need to do the bathroom correctly, I'm fine with that strategy. Because it potentially could also increase the likelihood of getting a contractor because, this project is not that expensive and there is a lot of work out there right now for contractors.
Yeah, and let's do a one and done. Let's
Yep.
really plan what your organization needs as part of the facilities and what you need in terms of bathrooms, and let's get that plan and let's hear it.
So I personally would not want to seriously consider, unless there's a really significant economic benefit to it, to do both bathrooms, because they're part of a whole integrated plan that we had for the entire facility. So, I mean, look into it all you want and bring us any information you can. I'm 100% for that. But I just want to caution that this money in the the building expendable trust is there also for emergencies. It's a very old building, et cetera. So I just want to caution that we're not having an embarrassment of riches. We have means, and we should examine.
I don't think we're going to exhaust the balance, but let's just see what the plan is and what the associated costs are.
I don't mind
Can-
looking at anything.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question too?
Oh, yeah.
How was this project selected, or do you know the answer to that?
Well, the project was selected because of the traffic flow that everybody has to go through somebody else's office to get to their office. So by removing the tub, we gain access to multiple offices in a much more professional environment.
Yeah.
Where Lance could actually have an office and not a pass-through. If you're more familiar with the first floor, it's kind of the situation with Rich Raymond's office. It's kind of a natural pass-through between Gina's office and the front hallway. Again, it's an old house, so it's totally appropriate for that. But the minute you get into a working environment, it creates difficulties.
So at the top of the stairs, there's a bathroom.
No, I understand. I guess
And
I
behind
guess
it are 2 offices full of people.
I understand. My question was really, was there a reason that it was only put forth as removing the bathtub and not put forth already as remove the bathtub and update the bathroom?
Well, I think to Tammy's point, in the bond plan, there was money to renovate both bathrooms. What we're just saying is by accelerating the removal of the bathtub, we get a better flow for employees during next year. And if the bond passes, the 2 bathrooms get done along with the renovation.
Okay.
If the bond doesn't get passed, at that point, we could come back and say, let's do both bathrooms, to Tammy's point.
I just think, I'm totally with you, Rob. I'm just being the voice of fiscal conservancy. We
Okay.
need to remember that this money needs to be we need to hold a certain amount, which we've never really discussed, with a thought to emergencies. I think,
Yeah, I think Kelly enters into these type of costing exercises with that in mind. I don't think she's going to sink the 65,942 in one swing at the bat. So I'm
no, if
just
you're going to
interested.
renovate two 1950s bathrooms, 65 may not even be enough. I'm just saying, the leftovers after the
Maybe so.
15, we have to think about.
Maybe so.
To
But
Brooke's question, if I understood one aspect of it, we only got Lance full-time a year ago, and COVID and all of that. His situation is outrageous as a working space, and the spaces to his north, the two bedrooms that act as offices for our business office, aside from Kelly, cannot exit without going through where he works. And, 4 years ago, no one worked there. It was just storage at the top landing of the stairs. And then a desk was thrown in there for a part-time assistant in HR who became full-time. And that person's up and down all day, okay, maybe, moves a lot, and it's impossible now. So
Well, I
I
don't
think
think
the
it matters
pressure point
who's
is that back.
occupying the space. The fact remains is it's a professional office
Yep.
that people are having to continually walk through. So I definitely understand the merits
But
of
I'm just
the
saying it's been
bathtub.
triggered by an urgent situation.
Yeah, okay.
So moving to the Water System Expendable Trust, for those of you who may not know, or the public at home, we actually oversee the water system for the schools, the middle school and downtown Monument Square area. A number of years back, we established a trust that we utilize to address pieces that come up. So Kelly is requesting $4,758 to use the trust for an emergency replacement of the Rocky Pond house pump. So the pump in there needs to be replaced. There are no other plans at this time for these funds. The current balance is $40,112. If you approve the expenditure, that it will provide us with $35,354. This is an area that we feel has to be done. And I'll take any questions on the expendable trust for the water system.
as part of that plan, Andy, what kind of security measures and fencing and any type of video surveillance? I mean, water is a precious thing, and we don't want it, we want to make sure it's secured and
Yep.
maintained well.
I think from the security end of it, Rob, I'm comfortable. We don't have presently any video cameras out there. It's something I can ask Rich Raymond to investigate for a future date. Again, our custodians are fabulous. They check on it quite regularly. They're required to kind of be out there a lot. And we, across the SAU, we do monthly water testing, and that pretty much comes from the pond or the pump house, whichever is required on that time. So I think this takes care of it. It is something that we need to continue to look at, like for a warrant article next year. And I did converse with the town, because the town has its 10-year master plan coming out. And I've recommended in my thoughts from the school district that they have to look at the water system and start looking for what I'll call a longer-term solution. What happens if Rocky Pond goes dry? That type of thing. So I've talked to Mark, who's the planning person in the town, and that is on their kind of discussion. So I think we're moving in a very positive direction.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, the pump house pumps water from below. It doesn't actually take water from Rocky Pond directly.
That's correct.
Just to be
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah.
No, but one year we had a substantial drought situation where we were really at risk of being able to supply
Yep.
everyone on that.
Ed was checking it every day.
And
Right.
we were getting close to having to make a decision on who do we supply. So it was getting a
No, I just wanted to clarify, it's a well,
very
it's not-
unsavory decision that we were having to make, because the drought was literally, the pumps were getting
Very
very close to, they were measuring like
But
how
my
much.
point only is that we don't pump water out of the pond itself.
Right.
We're
No, of
pumping
course
water-
not. No well does that.
There was a comment that was made, so I just
Yeah,
wanted to make
I
clear.
did say that.
And Andy, can you just refresh us why there is nothing being added to
Right.
the water system trust in FY '22?
That was my next question, too.
We didn't go out and ask for a warrant article this year because we felt right now, the piece that would happen would be some sort of break in the system. So we felt that 35,000, if it was on us, would cover the break. If it was a break that was covered under insurance, the insurance company would take care of that. But I do think you'll see us request at least some funds, if not to just get back to the 50,000 or more, because the next big thing would be some sort of in-depth study of what are our alternatives if that didn't exist anymore.
Gotcha.
Right,
Thanks for
which
that.
was always the intention for this trust. So
Right.
thank you, Carol, because that was my next question too, and I appreciate that.
And lastly is the Hollis School District Special Education Expendable Trust. We have no plans at this time to use the funds in FY '22. If some student moved into the district and there was a new expense, that's what this fund is designed to address. So if that were to happen, we would come back and hold a public hearing specifically around this trust. If need be, share with the board in non-public what the situation is that we need the funding for, and then come back out in public, and as best we could inform the public why we were making this withdrawal from the expendable trust. We're not requesting that this year, so the current balance is $50,041. We're adding 25, so we'll have $75,041 anticipated.
And just a question there. So if we had cases or cases, unexpected cases,
Right.
that exceeded the 75,041,
Yeah.
we do have other avenues that we can turn to address any overages.
Correct.
So it's not like this is a hard number. I mean, we kind of put this, we created this to manage risk.
Right.
But if we were presented with a situation where we exceeded that amount, just for folks at home, we do have, I want to kind of confirm with you that we have other avenues of funding if necessary.
Right, well, first, we would go to the operating budget. So that's the first place we would look. Within your operating budget, Hollis is fortunate to have a contingency fund. So we would potentially go there next. After the contingency fund, we would then look at this trust, and then we also have the ability to request funding from the state based on unforeseen circumstances. So there are some avenues for us. This is, I think, your assessment to mitigate risk is a perfect assessment. In both Brookline and the co-op that started their trust many years before, they're both capped, I think, at about $280,000, which is about 50% of the most expensive student we could encounter. And it sounds like a huge sum of money until you realize it's only 50% of a student we could encounter.
Yeah.
We also agreed with the budget committee to, just a verbal agreement that we would also cap this fund. I think it was it 250?
It's
Was
like,
it
I think it's
258?
280.
280?
It's
Something.
definitely in
I'm
the
sorry, I've
minutes.
forgotten now. We should look at minutes and determine.
You know where I'm going with this.
What?
Do we have a policy around that would express what that cap is so that
No, I
can be
think when we-
managed forward?
During our discussions with BudCom, when this was created and each year subsequent, it was agreed that special ed can be a very volatile expenditure source, and that we would just agree that we'd cap it informally at 280 without formalities, because things can change.
I would.
With special ed, it's not as simple as
I would,
facilities.
as a point of good governance, I think verbal agreements really don't matter, because this board could be comprised of 5 new people next year, for all we know, and verbal agreements go out the window. It may, of course, there's no immediate need to, like, we need this tomorrow, but maybe over the course of this cycle of the board, maybe we consider some sort of a simple policy that puts something tangible that doesn't necessarily tie our hands, but builds some sort of governance around the limits on these trusts. Maybe it could be one policy for several trusts, or maybe a single policy
they're all
for this
different.
specific trust, because a cap is in play and in discussion about it. Just something I'm thinking about.
That's it for the information I have regarding the public hearing tonight.
Well, public hearings is for us actually to listen to the public's view, right? And none of the members of the public have attended tonight, so we don't have comment. We've asked a lot of questions. Does anyone have any further questions or comments on any of these subjects? If not, then
Will we be discussing further during deliberations then the conversations around the SAU Building Expendable Trust?
Yes.
yeah,
so
we'll
we
be
can just
taking a
wait
formal
and do
vote.
that
This
in-
is the hearing.
We're just
So-
going to do that in deliberations.
Yeah, so the
we'll
hearing
do
is us
that. Okay.
listening, and then in deliberations, it's us
Perfect.
voting, so that will be
Yep.
coming. So if there's no further comments or questions or concerns, I will declare the public hearing closed at 6:51 PM. And then our next agenda item is public input. Again, we don't have any members of the public here in person, so we'll move on. If anyone does come in later, the sense of the board can be taken.
Point of order?
Yes.
Do we need to reestablish our regular,
Yeah, you know what,
because
you're
we
right.
went into
because-
recess, is there some parliamentary step we need to come back into?
Not in our notes, but in fact, we do. So I'd like a motion to return to public session from recess.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you, Rob, I appreciate that. Moved to return to public session, right?
Yep.
Session. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Rob, I appreciate it. So public, I have the principal's report, please.
In your packets, Paula and Candy had put together the information regarding, who's in school, who's still learning remotely. They're excited to be planning their field days. They have some wonderful things going on. We did get a confirmation that the governor will be coming June 11th. We don't know the time yet to sign the spider bill. They'll be doing that outside, in the outside classroom. So we're excited about that. Both buildings have been continuing with their positive reward systems for kids doing the right things. I was in Paula's building to hear the thank yous that go on over the PA from student to student, which is a very powerful message. And then Candy continually to recognize her students with the Wing Awards. So a lot of positive things going on. We're at June 2nd, and we're heading towards the finish line. I want to thank Paula and Candy and their staff for everything they've done this year. And that's it for the principal's reports.
I'm excited about Hughes having its not graduation, but promotion
Yes.
ceremony.
Yep.
I'm thrilled.
Promotion
that they'll be
ceremony
able
will
to do
be in person. Families have all been invited. We're looking forward to that. We're trying to do as many end of the year activities in I'll say a normal fashion as we possibly can. And we'll be making some decisions around masks at those events as well, because those are also events that we heard today would be eligible for no masks.
that. Excellent.
I had a question just on the second grade enrollment. I don't remember seeing this in previous reports, just 4/16 remote/in-person class.
So Andy, if you'll look not at the principal's reports,
Yep.
but of the SAU's
So it's also on the monthly breakout.
enrollment
Yeah.
breakout.
So in terms of the actual class enrollments?
No, what does that mean? So if you'll look, Andy, at
There are
that.
4 remote students and 16 in person
Correct.
being taught by a teacher sitting in the building in
Correct.
person. Zoom in the room.
Yeah. So let's say I brought my class back to school, okay? I came back and Tammy, you, Rob, and Carol decided you were going to stay remote. So I'm zooming in the room. I have 16 students in front of me in person and 4 students who are remote.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So I have a bunch of things I want to bring up on this, if folks are done commenting on the principal's report. I've been watching these enrollment numbers for a couple of years with particular interest, and COVID, of course, has been a bowling ball through all of that. I know that many families chose to go homeschool route this year, and everyone I've asked at the SAU in public or in casual conversations at meetings, et cetera, is planning next year for these folks to return, and I certainly hope they do. But what I'm looking at, Andy, is that overall, we have 17% of our current enrolled students, just current. 17% of them are still in remote. That is a very significant number of students in remote learning. And I just think it's important to note that 17% of our student enrollment still feels most comfortable and confident in remote learning. And I think whatever it is they seek out of that remote learning, safety or otherwise, it's important for us to maintain and support that cohort as we have. If you look at, for example, I'm not so much concerned about the preschool because that number moves so often depending on multiple factors, but 23% of our 5th graders are in remote learning, and 32% of our 6th graders are in remote learning. And I don't draw any conclusions from this at all. It's just an arresting percentage of our students are still in remote learning and will be hopefully returning to full-time classroom in the fall. Hopefully there won't be any weird events this summer, any strange variants or any of that stuff, and we can get back to regular school in the fall. But it's just an arresting thing to sit and do the math and see what percentages of our kids are not in the classroom and are in remote learning, and what a huge service that has been from our district. And we have a lot of incorporating to do in the fall.
Do we know if we're going to continue a remote learning option as we move into September?
At this point, we would provide remote learning for students who had medical needs that would compromise them from coming to school. Our goal right now is to be in person. All the data is trending that way. That's what we're hearing from the Department of Health and Human Services, and that's what we're planning on. Bob and I this morning started to work on next year's reopening plan. So, you know, if we do meet in July, we'll go over those pieces because, you know, I think there's questions around masks indoors and different things like that. So there's a series of things still to come. Sure. But in terms of if we had to offer some remote, we would look at that. That was a difficult sticking point between the unions and the district, so we'll have to have some dialogue around that as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be important that, you know, we look at what the data says and what, you know, what we may need to provide as an option or decide not to provide as an option anymore, because remote and in-person does present, at least from my point of view, anecdotally, from my point of view, maybe some complexity about educational delivery at a whole. I will leave that determination solely with the superintendent and his staff to determine. But I'm, for one, very interested in what a post-COVID Hollis School District looks like.
Hopefully it'll look like
September.
the old Hollis School District. Hopefully COVID is mostly behind us and we will be able to proceed. I have every optimistic expectation that we are going to be mostly back to normal in the fall. But I think I just wanted to comment on, I don't know, I just wanted to comment. Sometimes I don't know exactly why, but I think it's important to notice that a significant percentage of our students and their families felt the need to continue in remote learning even after the opportunity to return to the buildings was offered. And I want to just respect that and pay attention to that, and then also just ask ourselves, or ask, you know, the staff, as you said, projecting forward over the next few months as we plan, and then the opening of the school year, what will we need to provide to ensure everyone's getting what they need to get? Thank you. So that takes care of the principal's report. Now the discussion section of our agenda. So first on the docket is FY 2021.
Yep. Very excited to report that we're running a unreserved fund balance of $550,849. The voters approved the maintenance trust, which we discussed earlier tonight, of $120,000. The building trust of $23,970, the sped trust of $25,000. Kelly has encumbered the requested amount for Air Handler 3, and after all of those pieces are done, we have a projected fund balance of $97,879. One thing I will point out is the retained fund balance, we increased that to what I would call the maximum last year during COVID. I think it would be appropriate, once we have the auditors come in and go through everything, we would need to have a discussion, do we want to maintain that number? Traditionally, we had been closer to, I would call it 180 to 200,000. So we may want to bring that back down to a pre-COVID number.
Well, that number, I think, is co-op. For us, it was always 152. There was this magic number of 152,000.
Okay, so I mean, we definitely will need to have that discussion.
Yeah.
Kelly is putting it at what was the maximum projection.
Sure.
Because that's what we did last year. So obviously, if we change that number, the return fund balance would go up from the 97 in the area of potentially is, I think the largest amount would be probably 120,000. But we have great flexibility there. And I do want to
And it
recognize.
would-
Go ahead.
Sorry, would that number be returned to the taxpayer? Is that the intent there?
Yes.
Okay, just
Yes.
making sure.
Yep. So we, again, once we get through the auditors, we had them there last week, so round one of auditing is done.
Already here.
Yeah, and then they come and spend a quality week with us in July, and they close the books, and we'll be able to report the, what I'll call the final numbers. So there's more to follow on that, but I do want to just recognize Donna Smith and Linda Sherwood, the two assistant BAs who live in the day-to-day budgets and work with Kelly and have done just yeoman's work of managing this. You know, when you think about it, you know, all the PPE, all the supplies, it's been great. On the, moving along to the building project, I'm just really excited. We are ready to go. We will be asking our special ed programs to be at the middle school again this year, just so we have, you know, safety on campus, because there'll be a lot of moving parts. You're looking at extensive work on HPS with the sprinkler system, which is their main objective this summer. And then up here, it's our unit ventilators in the classrooms. There's going to be extensive work done on all those, which will make our entire ventilation system better, as well as our heating system function much more efficiently. And then for the first time at the end of the project, we'll be tying all of this into a central database that can be run from off-site as far as changing the heating and getting notifications. So we should hopefully see the majority of days of a burst pipe behind us, because those notifications would come into the maintenance people on their phones saying there's something going wrong, which they can right then change the heat right on their phone and things of that nature. So really excited to get that going. We'll see some visual work on the 14th, and then a lot of deliveries that week, and then the week of the Monday following the 18th, which is the 21st, a lot of people on site. Next, I was kind of looking tonight not to spend a ton of time, because we've already gotten a little bit behind schedule, but last month we had discussed at a workshop the diversity, equity, inclusion, and I was just looking for some direction back from the board. I gave you the statement that was done by the committee. I gave you the recommendations, which we had gone over, and I didn't know if the board wanted to prioritize those, give any direction. I know there was some comments made by board members that wanted to potentially talk about adding things to my list, and this is the ideal time, because this would be what I would call the start of summer work.
Andy, I understand there's news from the New Hampshire School Board Association, is that right? Andy or Brooke? With respect to policy, the policy review that we had.
Oh, that's what you're referring to. Okay, thank you. Well, yes, it is somewhat relevant that at our policy meeting, it was revealed that the policy review were slated for next summer, so it'll be a year from now when that policy review can happen.
You had said that we're on a waiting list because everybody signed up for this?
Yes. The one that was going to be a comprehensive review of all of our policies.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you all remember, Rob, Amy? Yeah, so that was kind of one item that I think as a board we talked about expecting, you know, something really valuable coming out of that, and I still expect that, but it's going to be delayed. by approximately a year, just because it's a long waiting list and we'll have to wait our turn. So in the meantime, any questions, concerns, interests that we have as a board on this subject matter respecting policy, we had sort of kind of in our discussions, I felt, we're trying to defer to this review, or at least put the horse before the cart. Let the pros look at our policies first, and then find out what we need to prioritize. It's going to take another year before they can get to us. So I think on the topic of policy, I'm interested in what the board would like to direct the policy chair, Brooke, to do, if anything at all, in the meantime.
If I may.
Yes, please.
I would suggest that we haven't had time to do it because there's been some things going on, but we may want to just reach out to Drummond and Woodson, who's our attorney, because they do the same service. And I think a lot of people like the School Boards Association because it's more cost effective. But as I've always said, sometimes it's better to have the person who's going to be defending you actually work with the policy. So I guess the action I'll take away with the board's permission is to reach out to Drummond and Woodson. I'll connect with Brooke as chair of the policy committee to see if they have any availability over the summer, at least to look at what I'll call a grouping of policies that we feel are essential for this work. Okay.
What kind of cost would you estimate, or what's your gut instinct that it would cost?
Well, a paralegal gets probably $165 an hour, and I'm guessing that would be the type of person that they would do for the ground level. And if we're looking, I'm going to say probably a half a dozen to a dozen, you know. And again, I won't just encumber the money and move forward, but to Rob's point, if we have a short meeting in July, that's something we can definitely address, because it may be really prudent to spend those couple dollars and just be done with that, because I know as a new policy chair, this will assist Brooke and allow that work to really get moving forward. So with the board's permission, I'll reach out and work with Brooke, and we'll talk to Jim and see if we can find somebody that can do this work.
Is everybody supportive of this?
So, just a clarification, so that assessment would cover general aspects in terms of compliance to RSA, things like that, but would we also ask for a special emphasis on DEI?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And I guess I would say I'd make that the priority before the general overview,
Yeah, okay.
okay?
Keep in
That's
mind,
good.
just for public consumption, we're not talking about having our attorneys rewrite our policies. We're talking about them reviewing our policies and
Like an
making
audit.
recommendations, suggestions, pointing things out, et
Right.
cetera.
Making sure they comply with current RSA guidance.
And they
But-
would come to us as recommendations, not you must do, unless we're somehow non-compliant with RSA.
Well, even if they are non-compliant, to Carol's point, it was still a recommendation, you're non-compliant with RSA, blah, blah, it would be up to us to bring them up to compliance. We're not paying anybody to change our policies, is my only point.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's a very important thing to make very clear.
Absolutely.
This is an assessment, this is a recommendations to be
Right.
given. We are not rewriting policy
No.
in some sort of, with
Nope.
certain glasses on.
So just on a bureaucratic level, having been policy chair, Amy's been policy chair, now it's your turn, so the other two of you look out, it's coming your way. Our policies always list RSAs that undergird, or that, our policies reference the RSAs the policy is written to comply with, as a reference point for anyone looking at the policy. So sometimes, as RSAs change through the years, we upgrade the language to comply with policy and we don't upgrade the references. It gets forgotten, or it's very easy not to be able to get the RSA references. So on the most mundane bureaucratic level, a review of this sort would give us recommendations for fixing just the important reference items that are on the page. And then furthermore, the language of our policies ensure they're in compliance. But then again, with the DEI emphasis, there's more recommendations. And we can throw all of that out, we can adopt some of it. It won't be changed until this board reviews what the recommendations are and brings it to public
Yeah,
session.
I would also add, under your leadership as policy chair, certainly, and Amy's leadership,
right.
and now Brooks, we've been, as a district, we've been very diligent
Very.
about keeping track of our policies,
Right.
keeping them updated, making changes where we need to. Over the past several years, I felt that we are in a great position from a standpoint of where our policies are.
Yep.
And this is even additional best practices to have, our attorneys that we work with to do this kind of assessment and
Review.
making sure that we're not talking ourselves into something, we're getting somebody else looking at this and saying,
Sure.
yep, you're right, or you're mostly right. There's some other issues. And I think
Right.
that's healthy and that's a good best practice.
Excellent, excellent.
A question on that. I had written in notes, had you said the number one, when you were listing the objectives, was review policies and procedures related to the document? So what I'm wondering is would it be in the purview of the lawyer to also look over additional documents that the district has beyond policy, such as handbooks and?
Well, what I would
That's a good point.
ask is that we start with the policies.
Okay.
And then as we dialogue with the attorney and kind of get a scope on the potential cost,
Okay.
because the handbooks are the responsibility of the principals and are updated on a yearly basis. So those are kind of vetted for the new laws and different things like that. But we could definitely look at that as well.
Excellent. And then my other question was, so I feel like we're getting like a check mark on objective number one. And number two was about how the Hollis School District is not changing our time-tested curriculum, but perhaps how we teach some of the lessons. And I think that's where we came up around a conversation of professional development.
Right.
And I wondered if that's maybe another place that we can talk about, an action item around professional development on the subject in the, near timeline.
I think whenever you talk policies or anything really related to the school district, you are talking professional development. So to Brooks' point, and again, not that I want our July meeting, but I just think because of COVID and everything that's going on, it may be prudent just to, even if it was a day meeting, get together for an hour and meet. But what I'd like to do is, I know Gina's working on some pieces of professional development that are going to be required based on new state laws and things coming out, like, we've done suicide prevention and different things like that over the last few years. So again, what I'll ask her to do is kind of put her thoughts together for what I'll call our opening professional development. And it'll be timely because we have our first retreat day, June 24th. So I think we can start to scope that out and have, kind of give you what I'll say, a framework of, in July. Because I do have that in my notes from last time, Brooke, on that as well, looking at that professional development. On the strategic plan, that's kind of already in process, so I'm going to assign that to Gina and I, because we're kind of finalizing, as I told you last meeting, the portrait of a graduate, where we're going to need some input and potential guidance, is how do you want your objectives in Hollis to be written around this topic? We don't need to have that tonight, but getting that done over the summer, or at least in our August to September meeting, would be a huge help. And then with regard to programming pieces, I'd put that back to Candy and Paula. They're in the trenches, get some input from them about what we should be looking at, and that, because that would also come back to the strategic plan. It may not be something we want to do in September, but it may be something that, we've been bantering about, and it's something that the Hollis School District wants to do by September of 2024. So I'll give them that charge to kind of, get that fresh set of blood flowing around the topics. And then the last two pieces there, 5 and 6, those to me personally fall under the leadership team. And when I say that, I mean it's the SAU and it's the principals and assistant principals from all our buildings. Because Choose Love in an elementary school is different than Choose Love in a middle school or a high school. So I think having that discussion together and getting them on board around courageous conversations and how do we maximize those. So with, the pieces that I've outlined, I think we can give you kind of what I'll say, a framework in July that'll help you to start to determine where you want to go as a board. Because our strategic plan has always been looked at as just for us, that roadmap. We want to take everybody along for the ride. So if we had that in July, we have our second 2 days of retreat, August 16th and 17th, which is when I would require building principals to kind of do the goals that they would be presenting to you in September. And this would be the framework. And again, this to me, to be effective, is going to have to be more of a long-term ongoing process than a one-hit wonder. So I think helping them to roll it out will be good. And I think with Brooke's piece of the professional development, kind of the all-encompassing piece, I think that would go very well. And I'll have more information because I've begun working and interviewing some teachers based on questions and comments that have been directed to me.
Interviewing teacher candidates, or?
No, staff that work for us.
And when you say interviewing, what do you mean? That's an interesting comment.
Having conversations about, where we're going and what we're
Very
doing.
good. I love that. That's
Yep.
wonderful. Yep.
Yep. Okay. Excellent. I really appreciate the help and the guidance. Brookline has tackled round one, what you did last month. They've done that. And if you notice, I'm kind of just putting the discussion dates on the top left, so the one I handed out, you'll see it has the Hollis board meeting, it has the Brookline, the Hollis. The co-op will have its first introduction, so they'll kind of do what you did last month. And then eventually everybody will catch up because the co-op has a much more formal summer schedule than Hollis traditionally has. Okay. And then what I'd like to do with the board's permission is work with the chair and kind of craft some dates that would work June, July for a meeting and send out some different times. And we'll see if we can, make it work so when nobody's out late or it's not a long meeting. And Tammy and I will really work along with Amy to just kind of narrow that agenda so we all stay focused, and then how that builds us into August. And that's it for...
Any more commentary on this particular subject? I want to be sure we're not kicking cans down the road. I agree with you, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I want to just say it out loud. We're not trying to put things off or procrastinate. It's making plans that can really be effective and meet everyone in the community's approval. And that takes time and thoughtful consideration. If there's no further discussion on that subject, I think we're ready for deliberations.
Yes.
So we added the hire and termination authority for the summer. Do you want that? Shall we just jump right to that?
Sure, you can go that one.
So every year, if you'll recall, we consider taking a motion and voting to grant, excuse me, the superintendent the authority to hire and or terminate over the summer without seeking our approval at an immediate meeting first in order to facilitate the large amount of work that goes on in the summer.
And I think the history behind this was primarily because we, as a practice, if you will, we didn't meet on July, right? We took the
Yeah, you
we took
instituted that.
the action not to do it. So we didn't want to create an issue where that ties the hands of the superintendent. So these two actions are coupled together.
Correct. And July 1, as people already know, is the first day of the new fiscal year. That's when contracts and,
That's right. A lot of
hiring goes on, et cetera. So a lot of things go on at the SAU. The summer, everybody thinks the SAU has got a lighter load in the summer, and in fact, it's quite the contrary with the processing of contracts, et cetera, and the audits that go on, et cetera. So can I have a motion, please, to grant the superintendent and his designee authority to hire and/or terminate as needed starting June 3rd, 2021 through until the August
Yep.
meeting of the Hollis School Board?
That's what
So
we
moved.
did.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Hopefully, very good. Carol, that was the second. Thank you.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Thank you, 5-0. So now policies, go ahead.
I move to accept the third reading and adopt policy IHAMA, teaching about alcohol, drugs, and tobacco.
Second.
Carol, okay. Discussion?
So the only thing that was discussed at the policy meeting was the discussion around the removal of and like suspensions, and in checking with Officer Bergeron, that those are the terminologies used in DARE, so that we were good to go, was the feedback.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you very much. Policy ADC?
Okay. I move to amend in the second paragraph under section D by deleting the word call, accept the third reading and adopt policy ADC, prohibition regarding use and possession of tobacco products, e-cigarettes, and e-liquids in and on school facilities and grounds as amended.
So moved. I'm sorry, second. I get kind of in a
Got
track.
into it.
Discussion? All in favor? Policy GBED.
Motion to rescind policy GBED, prohibition regarding use and possession of tobacco products, e-cigarettes, and e-liquids in and on school facilities and grounds.
Second.
Discussion?
So Brooke, can you kind of walk us through the rescind part? This is not something that maybe our community sees very often, where we're rescinding a policy, so.
Yeah, it's
just
simply
to
that
clarify for folks maybe watching at home.
policy GBED will replace, policy.
ACD?
EDC.
GBC, yes, will replace this policy, so it's no longer
So
necessary.
policy ADC is replacing GBED.
Yes.
Further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. And that's all the policy work, yes? Am I mistaken?
No, that's it.
I think that's it. So next on our agenda, thank you, Brooke, to see what action the board will take regarding appointments to the SAU 41 subcommittees as discussed. Policy states that the chair makes recommendations to the board, appointment recommendations, and the board votes. So we've talked about Rob being the rent and lease. I'll take the insurance subcommittee, and Brooke and Rob will be serving on the
Compensation.
staff compensation committee. So if I could have a motion to approve those appointments.
So moved.
Thank you, Carol.
Second.
Thank you, Rob. Any further discussion? All in favor? Great, thank you very much. Next on the agenda, to see what action the board will take regarding the appointments to the board's collective bargaining teams for HEA and HESA negotiations. This is mine, and we've all had conversations here and there, and I would like to recommend that Rob and I be appointed to the Hollis Education Association collective bargaining team, and that Amy and Carol be appointed to the HESA bargaining team with the board's approval. I've had conversations with all of you, and I think,
So I move to accept the chair's appointments
thank you.
for collective bargaining teams for HEA and HESSA or HESA.
Second?
Thank you, Carol. Just for the public's knowledge, because a selectman once asked me, we always have, our teams are supported by our longtime labor attorney. He has also worked with the town. He's very well known, highly, highly regarded. And so just so the public understands and for the record, that we as individuals do not represent the district or the taxpayer without strong legal counsel, along with our senior staff in these sessions. Right?
I think it's going to be important to get some feedback from our budget committee in terms of, are there any items they wish us to focus on as part of our negotiation strategy, if they can provide any input or at least offer for them to provide that input. Certainly they can give us that input through our representative to that board, or to that committee. The other item I think is going to be important is our negotiating teams need to have an understanding of the final date that our budget committees will accept finalized language for their review and hopefully support. I know they have very specific opinions on that. We will need to know what those parameters are as we start building our strategies and items that we want to take to the negotiation table.
So Carol, Amy,
Done.
thank you. Keep in mind that discussions of that nature would be at least in non-public, but mostly non-meeting, because they are on a legal advisory basis. There are RSAs that protect this information. So you should give the chair a heads up as he's agenda building for this purpose. There has been discussion in the past that, and I'm completely not knowledgeable. I am not suggesting it. I just remember there was question. Can the budget committee actually have a non-public session? I don't remember.
Yes,
what
they can.
RSAs were discussed at the time, but I just wanted to clarify that these topics are protected information. Thank you. To see what action the board will take regarding the administration's recommendation for the Hollis School Buildings Expendable Trust Fund. So could I have a motion? I don't think Andy needs to review the whole thing, although, yeah, the motion has the language in it that we need. We don't have to read all the line items
Did we vote on the
This is the
appointment?
vote. Oh, on the appointment. No, we
On
haven't
the
taken a vote
appointment.
on the.
We've got a,
HESA,
On
the
HESA,
board.
we got a
Oh, I'm so
motion on
sorry.
the
That's
floor.
right. It was a motion. I beg your pardon. Thank you for catching me. So all in favor? Thank you very much. Thanks for staying sharp. So the next item is the material that we presented in public hearing. I'd like someone to give that motion, please. Amy, if you would. Can you?
Sure. Motion to authorize the expenditure of an amount not to exceed $114,500 from the Hollis School Buildings Expendable Trust Fund for the purchase of the maintenance items identified during the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you, Carol. Further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Next item, to see what action the board will take regarding the administration's recommendation for the SAU Building Expendable Trust Fund.
Motion to authorize the expenditure of an amount not to exceed $15,000 from the SAU Building Expendable Trust Fund for the renovation detailed during the public hearing.
Second.
I would like some guidance in terms of how we disposition this motion. We had a lot of discussion around the 15,000 versus a different plan coming to the board later this month or early or some point in July. So any recommendations about how we disposition this particular motion would be very helpful to me.
Well, what I would recommend is, the motion's been on the floor, it's been seconded. This is the amount that Kelly knows would be able to get the bathtub removed and a hallway put in. We would delay that until we come back to our July meeting, where I will get the requested information of what if we did the entire bathroom, that type. And at that meeting, we would be potentially adding a different dollar amount to finish off the bathroom. If at that meeting it was too much, you know, let's say, to Tammy's point, it was just too much, and we didn't feel we should spend the money, then we already have the predetermined motion of the 15,000 to get
Okay.
it done. So this gives us that flexibility, and if it was all of a sudden, let's say it was, you know, $45,000 to do the bathroom. I personally, I'm not sure it would be worth it. It would give us no backup if something went wrong during the winter with a boiler. So we, you know, I may notify the chair and tell her the information, and then we'd just make a decision like we've done in the past to move forward, and would notify the board via email.
You comfortable with that, Rob?
I am.
Excellent, excellent, very good. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. So do we need a non-public?
But we have one more, and
We got the
Dawn
water
missed it.
system,
We
yeah.
have the water system.
Oh, that's right.
And the special
That's right,
ed.
I'm so sorry.
Well, the special ed needs no action because we're not
Right, that was
expending
just
anything.
informational. So I'd like a motion to authorize the expenditure of, 2 seconds, please. Where is the water? Where is it?
$4,750.
Say it, go ahead and go for it.
Uh,
Just use the one before it.
Okay, yes, I move to authorize the expenditure of an amount not to exceed $4,758 from the Hollis School District Water System Expendable Trust Fund for the renovation, for the expenditure detailed during the public hearing.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Thank you, thanks for catching that. Carol.
And to Rob's point, we don't need one on the special ed trust, that's just informational. We would have to come back to you again at a separate public hearing if we wanted to spend any of that money, Robert.
Thank you.
And to your answer, Tammy, we do not have a non-public tonight.
Excellent, woo-hoo! That's a happy thing. So I don't think I see anything else on the agenda.
May I just make a quick statement before we take the non-debatable motion?
Absolutely.
Bob Thompson, thank you very much. This
Yes.
is your last meeting with us.
Thank you for all the support. I greatly appreciate it, and I'm going to miss this place a lot.
It will miss you. Thank you for everything.
Yes.
We appreciate you.
Here, here.
Are out-of-town residents allowed to speak at public meetings in Hampton?
Well, I'm actually currently in negotiations with my wife about where we may relocate, and Hollis is definitely on the short list.
Ah,
So, you know,
So don't ever stand at that podium.
oh, I'm going to come here and harass all of you like you would not believe.
I'll buy property in Hampstead just to return the favor.
But thank you.
Awesome.
All right, so
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor? Thank you.
thank you all.
You know.